Hello everyone, this is Kratos here again to bring you a very special and long overdue video that I've been thinking of doing for quite some time now. In this video, I'll be discussing the philosophy of Kratos and delving into the reasoning as to why he acts the way he does, specifically in the current game, or the most recent game, and how that contrasts with his past life. This game is the fourth major installment of the series and perpetuates the story of a much older version of Kratos. He's a Spartan warrior who in his younger years endured many traumatic events and tackled the travesties of the Greek pantheon, coupled with slaughtering almost every god in his quest for revenge. Now that may seem very bland in one note, but trust me, the lore is extremely rich and physically touching to the series. This game shows Kratos reflecting on the philosophy of his past actions, which then allows us, as the players, to interpret and contrast it with how he is now. It is because of this that I'll be making some references to previous games regarding his current thoughts. Set around 115 years after the events of God of War 3, this game visualizes Kratos as a much older, more sagacious man on an adventure to control his rage and become a very good role model for his son, Atreus. We're consistently shown that Kratos still struggles with the horrific events that occurred by his hand in Greece while raising his son. And an interesting fact that most of you might not know is that this is heavily inspired by Cory Barlog's situation with his own son, and how he wasn't capable of being there for him due to working on this game. The main story consists of Kratos and his son, Atreus, hoping to complete the final wish of his mother Faye, which is to spread her ashes at the peak in all the realms, which they assume to be the highest point in Midgard at that time. They face many challenges while on this quest, which results in a very fascinating dynamic between the both of them. Kratos wishes to suppress his murderous side, while additionally seeking to avert his son from becoming what he used to be. As a result of what was previously mentioned, the game facilitates a very cohesive philosophy that Kratos manages to maintain throughout the story. While exploring on a boat at the beginning of the game before collecting Mimir, Atreus asks Kratos to tell him some stories, which he reluctantly does. Something to note here as well is that some of these stories actually relate to Kratos' past, and I'll be mentioning and referring to the ones that relate most deeply. This story was the classic tortoise and hare race. The lesson drawn from this is that the hare was profoundly overconfident, while the tortoise remained diligent and determined, thereby resulting in him being triumphant in the race. Throughout the game, Kratos manages to embody the concept of the tortoise in the sense that he perpetually attempts to remind his son to not get overconfident, which Atreus still does, which then leads to horrible consequences for both Atreus and Kratos. This could additionally be referring to how Kratos was zealous in the original trilogy, when despite winning, he never truly got what he wanted.
You owe me this, Kratos.
I owe you nothing.
I made you a god. I sheltered you from the wrath of Olympus. I delivered you revenge on Zeus.
It is over, Athena.
You would dare strike me down? Again?
My vengeance ends now.
Kratos, no! You fool! What have you done? You disappoint me, Spartan.
The next story consists of a hunter, a horse, and a stag. The horse seeks vengeance against the stag and enlists the hunter to help. The hunter agrees to aid the horse, but states that he must be allowed to ride him afterward. Together they both kill the stag, but in the end the hunter refuses to let the horse go. This reflects on Kratos' own story for revenge in his previous life in Greece and how he became a slave to it, losing his liberation by having it consume his life. Atreus follows up with the question, was it worth it? And Kratos responds with, it was not. This is referring to how Kratos got his revenge against the Greek gods, but in the end, it wasn't worth the repercussions of what he did. It also better shows Kratos' development as a character by displaying that he's capable of actually talking about his past, even if it's in a very subtle and vague way. This also could have been used as a means for Kratos to gauge how Atreus would possibly react to his story if he didn't insert himself into it in a more unbiased manner.
And his life.
Well.
But to Kratos, victory was worth any price, even his soul.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
That desperate call for aid would come to haunt Kratos for all his days.
By the gods, what have I become?
The third story involves a frog and his son who come across an inscrutable well. The son wants to explore around the well, but his father rejected the offer and perpetuated their course. While telling the story to Atreus, Atreus cuts him off and states that this story has no value whatsoever and that it was a very boring solution. Kratos responds that if they did go down the well, they'd just get trapped and die. The lesson Kratos is trying to convey here is that you should avoid jumping into unknown situations without care, and the paramountcy of listening to those who are wise and have experience. This is referring to how Kratos in the past games would always jump into situations without any care for others or the world, and how it would always result in something bad. For example, Kratos shows an extreme lack of care when Hera is pleading to him in the third game about slaying the gods, and how every god he has slain so far has resulted in the world literally dying piece by piece. This is further displayed when she tried showing Kratos that all the plant life was decaying and dying, and how she could barely do anything to help keep it alive. The only time Kratos gave mind to what Hera said was when she talked badly about Pandora. It could also be referring to how Kratos was literally attempting to kill himself at the end of the first game due to the Olympians manipulating, lying, and refusing to give him what he wanted most. This is of course implemented by Kratos to ensure that Atreus doesn't follow the same path Kratos did in the previous games. The fourth story is about a thief who was uncontrollable, ran rampant, and eventually bit off the ear of the one who loved him the most, his mother. It was a warning about how an excessive amount of generosity and love, without balance and discipline, can result in a horrible outcome. This is most likely referring to how in his quest for revenge, he hurt many people who he loved and held dear, such as his previous wife, child, Athena, his mother Callisto, and all of humanity.
You have done well, Kratos. Freed from the bondage of Olympus and cleansed in chaos, mankind is now ready to hear my message.
Look around you, Athena. The world stands in ruin. What good is your message?
This is shown when Kratos, to a degree, struggles to control his rage even in the proximity of his own son. When Kratos and Atreus finally reach the peak of Midgard and Balder interrupts, Atreus lashes out in a fit of rage, to which Kratos attempts to calm him down, but Atreus responds by pushing his father, to which Kratos aggressively pushes Atreus back. He immediately catches himself on what he did and tries to reason and apologize to Atreus, but by then, it's too late. The final story is probably the most important one because it relates to Kratos on a far deeper level than any of the previous stories. This story involves a scorpion asking a frog for help to cross a river, but the frog is afraid that the scorpion will sting him on the way. and the scorpion tries to reassure the frog that if he were to, they'd both sink and drown, but halfway through swimming across the river, the scorpion stings the frog and they both drown and die. Atreus responds by saying, "That's sad. Why would the scorpion do that?" And Kratos says, "He was a scorpion. It is in his nature to do harm." Atreus then says, "That's just what Mom used to say about the gods." To which Kratos replies with, "Your mother always spoke the truth." As I said in the beginning, this is probably the most important story, because in truth, Kratos absolutely hates himself. And he hates what he is. Kratos sees himself as this scorpion and believes that the acts he commits are so atrocious that even though he can reflect on them and see them as wrong, he knows that he'll never change.
There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. It changes nothing. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
These 5 stories act as moralistic fables that provide a general idea of what Kratos is like throughout the game, and how he views himself throughout the previous games. He values hard work and focus, the discipline of the emotions, and being a wise, sensible role model for his son as his guiding stones. All of these stories are essentially projections of Kratos' past within the Greek pantheon, and they emphasize the fruitlessness of revenge. Kratos' ideals are further expanded upon due to mistakes or complaints made by Atreus throughout the game. The key to understanding Kratos' philosophy is to first look at his primary motives. Aside from spreading Frey's ashes, he hopes to instill the knowledge of survival in the most rigorous and unforgiving conditions to his son. He consistently attempts to refrain from killing throughout the game, but when the need arises, he attempts to teach his son to close his heart against those who are against him, which basically means that if he is ever threatened by someone else, it is okay to defend himself. However, Kratos also acknowledges the fact that the majority of the people they are going up against are also as desperate as they are to survive. Vigilance is one of the most estimable values in the world. Kratos tells Atreus to always expect the worst, assume nothing, and always be ready for an attack. He consistently forewarns Atreus not to become nervous and paranoid of the future. Keeping your mind in the present, yet remaining vigilant rather than in the realm of possibilities, is key. As such, he additionally tells him to keep his expectations low, which will result in never being disappointed in life. This is a very wise approach to the circumstances that the characters find themselves in, but Atreus responds with how it isn't a fun way to live life at all. But in the world of God of War, is it really a fun place to live? Kratos isn't as aggressive as he used to be in the previous games. This is exhibited within the novel for the 4th game, when Baldur first arrives at Kratos' doorstep and begins pounding away and screaming for Kratos to show himself. Kratos thinks to himself that if he were his past incarnation, he'd smash outward through the door and just start hacking into Baldur aggressively. Instead, he decides on attempting to resolve the matter placidly rather than belligerently. Now, he only kills out of necessity and defense, and not for indulgence. A component of Kratos lives within Atreus in the sense that he is expeditious to find himself consumed with rage, and often perilously loses control at critical moments in the story. This occurs an abundance of times, and Kratos tries to teach and warn him that anger shouldn't be suppressed, rather it should be controlled and be employed to benefit them during their journey, and in survival. One of the most profound, rational statements made by Kratos throughout the entirety of this game is probably one of the most emotional as well. He states, "True power comes from the heart, but only when tempered by the mind. By the discipline, the self-control, of the one who wields it. That is where the true strength of a warrior lies. He's saying striking the balance between one's emotions and rationality is key to survival and good living. This is a lesson that even you and I can both learn from. We either destructively follow our passions and emotions, or we become hyper-rational, which then results in depriving ourselves of an extreme amount of richness and purpose that only the heart can provide. We must instead follow our hearts, but have them reined in by the mind so that we can survive long enough to see our passions fulfilled. To summarize Kratos' philosophy, it's going to be difficult. As the narrative progresses, we learn that his view of the world is very sardonic and antagonistic. In the world of the gods, he can additionally be viewed as an anti-hero, being as at one point he completely shuts down what Atreus said regarding good gods by stating, "There are no good gods, boy. I thought I taught you that." But because of his son, he later learns that not everyone is out to get him and that good people do actually exist. At times, he becomes stoic to such a severe degree that he believes achieving happiness plays no role in his mind due to his extreme focus on survival. Yet happiness can also be really rich, with very good advice for living, especially when it involves achieving your goals as a person. Furthermore, it can also give some good parenting advice as well for soon-to-be parents. Now, of course Kratos is a flawed character. He's aggressive, abusive, crazy, even assertive, but he is still good at heart. We can never be Superman, but we can always learn from Kratos' story and apply it to our lives so that we never make the same mistakes. Or even if we do, deal with them appropriately. Now, it heavily pains me whenever someone says that Kratos is just a meathead with no character or development. It literally makes me cringe. Kratos has shown perpetually throughout this story, and even in prior games, that he is susceptible to human emotion, human mistakes, and he even progressively attempts to better himself as well. What makes him fascinating? He is a character that we can all relate to some regard in life and learn from. Because of that, I love Kratos. I absolutely love his character. He is literally my favorite character in all of fiction. And you ask, for what purpose? Why do you find this character so fascinating? Well, Kratos' story, to me, is a story filled with things that we as humans will inevitably feel throughout our entire life. Love, loss, revenge, confliction, hatred, betrayal, pain, and suffering. Kratos teaches us that all of these things are a consequential key to survival and living. His story further teaches us the issues with all of these concepts as well. It shows us that hatred can be self-destructive and emotionally crippling. It shows us the negative ways to deal with pain and suffering, that revenge is never worth it. These are stories that everyone who has lived life can relate to, because the world can be kind of cold at times. Now, obviously, I never witnessed my brother being kidnapped by an ancient Greek god, or having been coerced to kill my wife and child, but I've experienced, and will probably always experience, feelings of sadness, anger, and angst. It's in our nature as human beings to experience these things. It's in all of our nature. It is what we opt to do with this pain that we feel defines us. Kratos made astronomically indigent decisions dealing with his pain. He always blamed others. But when he accepted what he did was entirely his fault, and when he finally forgave himself, he was at peace with the world and everything he had previously done. He accepted he was a monster. He accepted that he'll most likely never change. He accepted what
Killed
he
my father.
was.
That was your father in hell. Is this what it is to be a god? Is this how it always ends? Sons killing their mothers? Their fathers?
No. We will be the gods we choose to be. Not those who have been. Who I was is not who you will be. We must be better.